So I hope all of you are doing great. So all of you expect yourself to clear prelims, right? So you have firm belief in yourself. Because this year, like, what do you think? This year paper, was it more difficult than last year, or what is your assessment? This year prelims paper 1, was it more difficult than the last year, or what is your perception? So how many of you think that it was more difficult than the last year? If you can raise your hands. Good. So how many of you think it was easy? So you are in minority. Good. So people are, like, so what is your cutoff expectation? 85 to 90. So what about others? Somebody said 110. Is it from this building or that building? So the बगल वाला building से कोई बोला 110. So anyway, welcome to this ace the mains session, right? So I don't know how we are going to ace it. So my concern is to ace this session first. So in this session I am going to talk about few important things that I have learnt over last 2 to 3 years by interacting with so many of you, so many students, both in Bangalore and Delhi, about what is the demand of the examination, how is it changing from year after year, and how aspirants must adapt to the changing demand of UPSC examination. So first I will talk about the optional subject. So irrespective of which optional you are studying, so there are certain demands to be met when it comes to optional subject. So I am sure all of you must have already started with optional preparation, right? So you have gathered all your material and you started revising optional. But like, despite knowing for very sure that you are going to clear, somewhere you also have that fear, right? Little fear, what if, that if you don't make it. So that might be preventing some people from doing what is necessary. But irrespective of whether you are going to clear or not, you must start with your optional subject. Now when you have started with your optional subject, now what are you doing with it? So are you trying to make notes out of it again? Are you trying to consolidate all of your notes so that it becomes easy to write the test series? I am sure you must be exploring various test series and you want to join optional test series, right? And write more number of tests. Now the first focus must be on one thing. With respect to optional, what is the expectation? As you know, last 2 years the scores are coming down in optional. And there are two trends here. One, people who used to score more marks in, let's say, 19 and 20 attempt, they have started seeing dip in their marks in some optionals. So I have seen in anthropology especially, right, optionals like sociology, political science also. Some of them who used to score better marks, if they had scored 300 plus, they have seen it dip to 250 or 260. If they were scoring 280, 290, they are seeing 220, 230 kind of score. And there is another trend where people who have specialization in their respective optionals, right, or who have brought certain specialized knowledge and have put little more effort than the coaching institutions, have started to see increase in their marks, especially among the freshers. If somebody is writing their first mains, if somebody has done post graduation in that particular optional subject, so we are seeing that some of them have started to get very good marks. Now on a whole, we are seeing the dip in the marks and the competition is narrowing down with respect to optional. So like earlier times, you don't have the advantage of scoring 30, 40 extra marks. Like earlier people used to target, let me score 330, 340 and spend so much of time on their optional subject immediately after prelims at the cost of GS and essay papers. Now number one, you need to spend enough time to score 260 to 270 marks. Now that is somewhere 270, 280 is the highest, but my advice, my suggestion, don't sweat it out too much when it comes to optional. Definitely not at the cost of your 4 GS papers and ethics paper. Now if at all you have any advantage, it is in these 5 papers, right? That advantage is not there in the optional subject. Now to get the 270, 280 itself is a challenging task. Now how do you get it? If your marks have dipped to 220, 230 or 240, and if this is going to be your first mains, in optional how do you ensure that you are going to score 280 or 290 marks? So one thought that I have come across, one idea that I have come across is that you need to, there are again 2 things here. One, you must be good with respect to every part of the optional syllabus. Now like earlier times, you cannot exclude those unconventional, so-called unconventional topics or peripheral topics or topics which you yourself consider, or because of previous year questions which you might have considered as not so important, right? But this doesn't mean putting so much of effort on them. So for all the topics, collect notes. I am sure notes is available. Be familiar with the concepts related to those kind of topics. So don't exclude any kind of topic from the syllabus, irrespective of whether it is maths, civil engineering, PSIR, anthropology, geography. Definitely do this. So why am I suggesting this point? So if you have written mains, you know the answer to this question, right? Now in some of the optional, we are seeing a trend where the questions, the topics from section B is coming to section A also in the question paper. So there is question 1 and 5 are compulsory in all the optionals. In question 2, 3, 4, where you have to choose one of the question, now they are split it. Earlier they split them into 2 parts. So in like 2016, 15 we used to see. Now they are splitting them into 3 subparts or 4 subparts where the topics are mixed. So you are forced to pick one of these questions, but at the same time you will see that one of those sub questions you are not very good in it. Now, so what my experience says is that if you can do justice to those questions in your optional, the questions which belong to those unconventional topics, that will lift up your score in the optional subject. The reason is, majority of the people will write very generic or some kind of cooked answer in those kind of sub questions. Are you getting this? तुम दिल्ली लोग तो इतना सीरियस दिखते, कुछ हंसते नहीं कुछ. You had lunch, all of you, right? So all of you are clearing prelims, right? At least for that reason you smile, right? अभी भी हंसते नहीं तुम लोग. Is it because of the Delhi heat or what? It's very hot. So whenever I come to Delhi, I tell it is like from fridge to pan. So from Bangalore, so fridge से like बाहर आके दो पैन होता है ना, क्या बोलते हैं तुम लोग हिंदी में, तवा. So उसके ऊपर गिरते हम लोग यहाँ पे ऐसे लगता है. So I get tired from walking from institution to यहीं पे flat लिया rent के rented. So we are not that rich to buy it. So like तुम लोग ज़्यादा numbers पे आ जाओ, like maybe in future. So बीच में हंसाना ज़रूरी है क्योंकि थोड़ा लंबी सेशन हो सकता है. So I was talking about 2 reasons, two trends. One, in these peripheral questions you must be good. In these unconventional topics you must be good, because if you do justice to those kind of sub questions in your answer paper, 100% sure, because that will lift up your marks. Because when others are doing injustice to those questions, when they are cooking up answers, writing nonsense, if somebody writes exact answer, exact concept, it actually translates into better marks across the paper. Now the second aspect of it is, for the repetitive topics, the topics which are conventional. If you look at past 10 years, there are like at least 50-60% of the topics which keeps getting repeated in some or the other form. Now for these topics, you have to do an enrichment exercise, value addition from the core standard textbooks, right? Again, not from another coaching institution or another topper's note. So, like if it is your anthropology or sociology or political science, I am sure every subject has both Indian authored books and foreign authored books also, right? Standard books. Some topper would have recommended, but I am sure like most of you haven't read all the textbooks. Mostly rely on the coaching notes, and you might have updated from current affairs, some kind of synopsis and all. But my suggestion, you select at least 50-60 most important topics which are repetitive in nature. You have to create your own advantage in these topics, something unique to you, right? Now, earlier I stated that somebody who has done post-graduation or honors course in that particular subject, they are being rewarded if they have completed the syllabus and completed the paper in the exam with good marks. Now, somebody who was engineer, as a doctor who has taken anthropology, engineer who has taken political science, if you have to match your answers, right, with somebody who has actually done an honors course, you have to ensure that for selected topics at least, refer to standard textbooks. So, that exercise must be done now in this gap of 10 to 15 days. This is very important because though it is going to get you like 20-30 marks advantage, but that is a huge advantage when it comes to optional subject. So, I mean, does it look scary or what? I mean, this is very important. So, what I am telling you may not be, some people may be discouraging, you read coaching notes, we will get, but when it comes to optional subjects, what is happening is that in the market, there are certain notes which get circulated predominantly. Whether it is in Delhi or whether it is in Bangalore, everybody has a habit of reading one particular notes which topper has recommended or which might have worked in the previous year. Now, most of them repeat content from those notes in their answers, right? For a evaluator, it is again kind of herd mentality that you haven't put any extra effort, you are just repeating from a coaching institution. So, they are not seeing the required amount of in terms of knowledge or example, conceptual clarity, interlinkings, application of theory in paper 2 or whatever it is, which actually exist in the standard sources. Is there anyone aware like who actually evaluates your optional papers? From which university they might come? They come from across India, of course, right? They come from central universities, right? So, if somebody is going to evaluate political science, they are senior professors from central universities from across India. When it comes to optional, there is no compromise. I have seen it in Kannada literature also. The people who are scoring better marks in Kannada literature every year are the ones who have internalized the subject, who have deep interest in literature itself. So, every year you have 1 or 2 exceptions who end up scoring 30-40 marks higher than the rest of the competition. It is these students who haven't forced themselves to go with the optional. So, they have actually developed a kind of deep interest, maybe they also had a prior interest in the subject, and they have actually read standard sources, they have internalized certain concepts, any value addition in terms of poems or stories or anything, which naturally flow into their answers. And again their marks are not like 300, 290 or anything. It is 20-30 marks above the rest of the competition. The same logic is working in other optional subject also, right? So, make a list of 50-60 topics, paper 1, paper 2, enrich whatever existing notes are there, refer standard textbooks, and my suggestion is don't do it in a group study also, right? So, be selfish here, your own notes, your own sources, update them, and it will 100% work, and start applying that in the test series. And when it comes to test series, if you are writing mains this year, my suggestion is less sectional test, more full length tests, right? Now usually test series are framed in such a way that they focus more on sectional test, 6 or 8 sectional tests, and then in the end 2 full length tests. But in the real examination, what you are writing is the full length test, of course. But for that, are you getting adequate practice? Just writing 2 in the end in a simulated way and directly going there might not actually help you, will not actually help you. So instead what you can do, maybe you can write just 4 sectional tests and take full length question papers, visit any center. You are welcome to use our center, right? You want to write your own optional test, we will keep it open. Come to classroom and write the full length examination in the classroom only, never from your room or the library or anywhere. Come to the classroom, take the question paper, full length paper, and write it in the classroom. So I will come to GS also, why this exercise is important. The classroom dynamics, the real exam hall dynamics are totally different compared to when you write from the comfort of your home, right? So that mistake people do, and when you are writing from the home, uploading it in your own convenient time, that actually doesn't prepare your mind for any kind of unforeseen circumstances or any kind of situation that might happen in the examination hall. So looking at all 20, how many questions are there in an optional? 19. Okay. So looking at all the 19 questions, thinking differently for each and every question, right? Coming up with sensible answer in those 3 hours under the pressure like situation, you have to go through that again and again. So my suggestion, at least 8 full length papers, right? So 4 paper 1 and 4 paper 2. If you can write more than that, that will be very good. So now, so what is the highest marks in your respective optional, if I can ask? Political science, what is the highest this year? 305. History? 306, rank 1. Geography, I heard 300 something. 306. Anthropology? 306. Any optional where somebody has scored 310 plus? 312. No, this year. No. I am asking about 22. So you see that I think only in one optional somebody has scored 310 plus, right? 306. 316. That is the highest this year. Who is that Mahapurush? Which rank? Rank 5. Acha. I took his mock interview actually here. Good. And we requested him, can we put your photo? He said yes. So we have put. So now an interesting thing happened today. Like, of course, you people also become toppers, right? So did you notice we haven't taken your registration or anything? We don't do that. So now our father came actually here, like he was happy and angry, saying that so my daughter is a bit upset. She has got rank 25. You haven't put her name in the list. No, actually, like we were like pleasantly shocked or surprised. What do I say? अंदर बहुत खुश हो रहा था, लेकिन so we were so we haven't put anywhere ad like claiming big toppers and all. On the list we verified if somebody had attended interview, we had just put interview, and because we showed this much of honesty, they themselves are coming and saying ki, we had used your test series or main test series or something. So that I think good ethics preparation and good ethics teaching also maybe. So nice. So now we have added, and we are inviting her to Bangalore for felicitation. बहुत लोग आएंगे यहाँ पे तो next year. Will you come? You will come as a? तो जोर से बोलो ना, वो भी like. Okay, good. So is optional clear? Did you know all these things already? Right. Now this is important to reinforce these ideas, talk about them publicly, because you might be knowing, I don't know what, because I don't teach any optional subject. So I go by the logic, I go by the data, I go by the marks, I go by the interacting with the students. And because I have this chance of doing so many mock interviews with so many of these toppers, right? So when you talk to them, you know that they are good in something, right, in some area. So they have certain core interests. So they might be good in optional, they might be good in certain hobbies and interests, they have cultivated over the years. So one trait I have seen that, so there is a correlation between their academic record, their all extracurricular activities, the extra readings that they have done, right, and in the quality of the answers. The depth will naturally come if there is an amount of extracurricular activities or kind of interest, reading non-fiction books or even fiction books, and the hobby and interest of writing, quizzing, these things. So they actually become visible in the answers, and they have the same trait when it comes to the optional also. There is an element of ambition when it comes to treating each of the subjects. Now with respect to optional, now the ambition in your case should not be like have the target of 300 plus or anything. The ambition when you are writing the test series to give the absolute best, treating every question, writing every answer to the best of your ability based on the extra effort that you are putting, right. And sometimes what might happen is some coaching institutions may not recognize your efforts, so they might discourage also, saying that they may not be aware also. So it's very rarely that teachers themselves correct your papers, right. A student who may be correcting your paper may not be aware about the examples that you are putting, so based on the extra effort that you are doing. So in that case, so don't get discouraged or don't leave the test series in between, but go to the teacher and ask, or if you have the privilege of meeting any professors or anyone, right, go and seek their guidance, right. So this thing I do with respect to essay. So in Bangalore also I was doing, and again I am coming here and I am meeting the students. I am doing that here also. So what I mean by this is, like we got second highest marks in essay this year. Rank 31, he got 147. Somebody said highest is 150 marks, 150, right? 150, 206. So this also story. So I claimed 147. मुझे पता नहीं था 150 somebody had scored. So on Twitter I put our student very proudly has scored 147, and it is the highest. Somebody commented, sorry to disappoint you. So disappointment कहाँ है पे इसमें, ठीक है. So he is ranked 206 and ours is ranked 31 है ना. So there is no disappointment. So what happened, he is a first attempt guy. He is from National Law School. His name is Avinash. So he graduated from National Law School, Bangalore. So he was a OGP student, our offline guidance program student. First attempt, we usually encourage our students to write essays from the very first week itself. So here what I heard is that people don't encourage students to write essays until they have completed the coaching, because they don't have the content, right, but they have the brain, right. So people think that they cannot write. We encourage them to write. So he used to write every week one essay and get it evaluated. So I noticed that he had done this extra bit of reading, had the habit of reading fiction, non-fiction, and had written few articles to journals and all. So he was basically good in writing, but the law students in the beginning bring so much depth, they focus on one dimension and they treat it as a thesis kind of stuff. So with regular feedback and evaluations, somehow I made him write more dimensions and all those things, but the evaluators were not recognizing it. In essay, when it comes to essay paper, I encouraged him to do one thing. Number one, maintain the originality, the whatever experiences, whatever readings you have done, bring them in your essay. But while bringing them, don't pollute it by the advices given by the toppers and coaching institutions, people do, right? Like, you divide your essay into the very basic pestle approach. You know the pestle approach? Political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. That is one approach. There is another approach which is seen in most of the essays, that your essay is divided into two parts. You have the topic, you have introduction, and you write the pro arguments about the topic. Second half you write against the topic, and then in the end you write the way forward, solution part, and then the conclusion. So this is the dominant form of writing essay when it comes to UPSC. So there is another form like temporal and spatial analysis, right? So you have like ancient to modern kind of division, and then you have divisions based on like geographical wise or something like this. So I told him completely discard these kind of things, because 99% of the competition is doing the same thing, right? Your originality is lost by the way you structure your essay, right? Because somebody is recommending write introduction, with 2 stories, start your introduction with 2 stories, because somebody told, everybody started doing that. Scene 1, scene 2, scenario 1, scenario 2, story 1, story 2, case 1, case 2. Some people, in order to make original, they change the word scene to case, the introduction, right? The story remains the same. The first story is pro, second story is contrasting, against, right? And evaluators started noticing this kind of herd mentality. And last 3 years I have seen the people who have scored highest marks in essay are the ones who have good reading habit, right? So this guy, I told him, you write it like a story, like you just go with your thought process, give complete freedom to your mind, right? So but keeping in mind, it should be rich with ideas, your essay. There should be diversity of thoughts, diversity of arguments, and for argument there should be kind of counter argument, and if you can able to negate that counter argument. And another aspect of bringing originality is either going with the pro or against the topic in the entirety of the essay. But wherever you don't agree, you can bring counter arguments always. So I hope you are getting this point, right? So you have a topic, so you are arguing in favor of the topic, but if you are worried about what about other dimensions, so you can divide your essay. If you have seen any of my essay perspective videos, like I used to do, it is there on YouTube. So for argument there is counter argument, that is the other side of the story, giving space to the other side of the story where you constructively criticize it. So what do you mean by constructive criticism? So you are objectively criticizing something, but at the same time you are giving solution also to solve the problem, right? So that is what, instead of dividing your essay into pro first half, against, and then way forward, there is a way to divide your essay into thematically 4 to 5 dimensions. Within each dimension you can actually do the entire analysis of that argument, right? So that is the mature essay which comes by reading standard sources. It is those kind of essays which are actually getting these 147 or 150 marks. All the conventional essays, now if you have observed most of the essay marks, there is this gap. The concentration of marks is between 100 to 120 and then around 135 to maybe 140, like toppers marks. And again, like in optional subject, there are like 2 to 3 individuals who have crossed the barrier, like again they have advantage of around 10-15 marks compared to the rest of the toppers. In every optional you have 1-2 individuals who have scored 300 plus. In essay also we are seeing the same. In ethics also 1 or 2 who have scored above 125 or 130, but rest of them are concentrated around just above average scores. The reason is, it is an encouraging sign in a way that UPSC is recognizing that kind of talents, right? And I believe everyone sitting here, if you can put little extra efforts, right, somewhat moving away from the competition, the herd mentality, if you can bring your individual experiences, your individual strengths into your answers, your essays, you can be those exceptions in your particular subject. It can be essay, it can be optional, right? So if you have already come with that kind of experience, effectively use it. Now don't go by the coaching institution if they say that you're not structuring well, this example is not suitable or something like that. Be your own judge, and I believe this trend will continue. This rewarding some kind of freshness which people bring into their papers through their original thinking or original like extra effort they have done is being rewarded, and it will continue to be rewarded, right? So for essay and ethics, we are going to start a series like for essay, in order to, because you don't have much time with you to do all this reading of books and all. So one quick suggestion I can make is there is one app called as Blinkist. Blinkist? There is this app called Blinkist. Anyway, B-L-I-N-K-L-I-S-T, Blinkist. So it is a Android and iOS. So what this app does is that it actually summarizes all the important books, right? So I think it's a paid app. For 1 or 2 months you can buy it, few hundred rupees I think. So what it does is it summarizes the most important, not every book almost which is coming into market. The books of Nobel Prize winning Booker, all big books. So they have categorized them thematically. There are books on spirituality, there are books on development economics, there are books on geopolitics, there are books on climate change, environmentalism, there are books on individualism, there are books on knowledge, like whatever keywords that you come across for all the essay topics. So you can make you can go through the blinks. It is called as blinks. It is like 2 to 3 minutes read of entire book. So they would just give the crux of the core ideas presented in the book are presented in a very easy format. So you can remember the author name, you can remember the book name, you can get the ideas, right, in the right context without artificially inserting them, right. In your essays, you have to practice them. You practice in such a way that, so you have a collection of books or quotes for every topic, and they are used in the right context in your essays. So that is the quick way for you to do it, because you cannot sit and read so many books. From our side, we are going to do around like 6 to 8 essay sessions and ethics sessions, where we will focus on this enrichment exercise, right. So to give you certain dimensions, certain value additions, which you can use in your essays. But again, it will have the danger of people using the things we give. So but we want this exercise to be more of like stimulating kind of exercise. We will give you ideas how to do that, but you have to implement it. Otherwise what will happen, you will be losing out 10 to 15 marks in the essay paper. Now that the gap I told about, the people have scored in the range of 100 to 120, and then there is 135 plus. So those 15 marks you will be losing out. So to gain those at least 15 to 20, even in the worst case, there should be some kind of originality and freshness in your essay, right. And how many essays you will write before the mains? How many you have target, like in your mind? How many you want to write? 10 essays. Kitna likhoge? So yeah, like we have in our IVIL, we have full length, 7 full length essay tests, right. So that means 14 essays. If you choose to join that, there are 14 essays which you can write. But when it comes to the extra practice, my suggestion is, if you can write around 20 essays, like as part of test series you will write around 14. So if you can write few more extra essays, every month I am coming here. Of course there are 3 more months, but I will be coming and staying here 3 to 4 days. If you want any kind of feedback on your essays, you are welcome to, whether you join or don't join the test series, you are welcome to come and show your essay, right. Again, I will not take your name and note down your face and everything. So if you have any gratitude, if your score improves, later you can, send your father and so tell us that you are also a student or something. So not to boast or anything, so since 2014 I am doing this exercise. Anybody who has come for feedback with respect to essay and ethics, people have improved the score. So ours is like, people who fail in previous attempt and then they come, that kind of category come in more numbers, and majority of them have improved their scores. It is just like identification of small problems here and there, telling you how you can actually bring value and do some extra value addition, right? So that realization and the very fact of breaking from this herd mentality, right, can just result in getting those 10-15 extra marks. But you should know, we should be aware that you are actually following the herd mentality, right? Now, what is the fundamental problem when it comes to mains? Why the marks are coming down, and what is happening across the competition when it comes to all GS papers, including essay and including optional? So last 3-4 years, we started seeing many toppers, many institutions coming and saying so present your answer in this way, write your answer in this way, structure your answer in this way, right? But in this race to write so many tests, enroll to so many test series, right? So one important demand of the exam was lost, right? So I have seen like literally thousands of answers of hundreds of candidates, and every year I keep seeing that. So what is missing in your answers? Most of the answers is that overall intellectual trait and depth of understanding of the candidates. The depth, the so-called depth, especially the analytical depth, right, is missing in the most of the answer. What is most evident is the range of their information and memory, right? So we can write here. Right. Range of information and memory has taken predominance in your answers. Now, if somebody wants to write a test series, if somebody wants to answer all 20 questions, the first focus is to complete the paper. So you want to write answers to all the 20 questions. So you are in the race to complete the paper. So while doing so, you are compromising with the depth, the very expectation of the UPSC, the depth of understanding of the issue that is there in the question, but you are getting carried away. In order to complete the paper, you are littering your answer, or you are dumping your answer with so many facts and examples, right? Or you are just writing too many generic points, skipping the example part and then moving to another question. Now evaluator is not interested in how many points you have written. It is not about the number of the points, it is about the quality of the points, right? So my suggestion for 150 words, so how many points you write for 150 word answer? If there are 2 parts, around 8 points or 6 points, how many? 8 to 10 points. So what I have seen is 6 to 8 points people write, right? So if there are 2 parts to the question, if there is only 1 part, you might write like in a linear way, you can enumerate around 6 to 8 points. So if I am sure like all of you have written some answers till now, right? So everybody has written answers. All of you must have written so many tests also. So in your answer, if you objectively, or honestly look back and see your answer, so you will see that the depth is lacking in the way that most of the points will be either generic, or even if you think that you have written very good points, the focus is always on the quantity. Now if you want to write 6 to 8 points, my suggestion is go to 3 to 4 points and bring depth in those points. So instead of writing a generic point, you have to validate, substantiate that point with not like 1 word example or 2 word fact or examples, but So can somebody give any question? Like I'll go with. Like this regarding essay paper, I had predicted like marks will come down by 10 to 15 marks, which precisely happened, right? Yeah. So trace the rise and growth of socio-religious reform movements with special reference to Young Bengal and Brahmo Samaj. So that was the first question for 150 words. So what is the demand of the question here? So I am not going to discuss the content of the answer because I don't know. I am just going to talk about demand of the question. So trace the rise and growth of socio-religious reform movements with special reference to Young Bengal and Brahmo Samaj. Can anybody talk about actually what is the demand of this question? Okay. See, the demand of the question is twofold. One, I'll talk about another mistake, the weightage allocation to the parts you create in the answer. So whenever you look at the question, now how many parts should be there in this question? 3 parts. 2 dominant parts. Which are those 2 dominant parts? So yeah, causes, reasons for the rise and growth of social religious reform movements, and with special focus on Young Bengal and Brahmo Samaj. Now, to which part you will give more allocation here? The first part or second part? So can you give reason like why do you want to give more weightage to first part? So it should be equal division. It should be equal division here. For this particular answer, it should be equal division. Now, let us start with the introduction part. Now, this depth of your understanding in any GS answer starts with by reading your introduction, right? Now, what people have, what people are doing in their introduction nowadays is start with the definition. So, for this answer, what is the definition that, what is the introduction that strikes your mind the moment you see the question? So, I will describe the situation of that period. Okay. Okay. So, what about other people, like what introduction, any history major? Like if this is the optional question, so what would be your introduction? Okay. Okay, so you will give the date and how it started. Like feel free to just open up, like I am just asking you, I just want to have a conversation, I want to prove a point here. You want to talk about Renaissance? Yeah. Okay, good. What about, yes? So you will highlight the fact that Bengal was the epicenter of such kind of social religious, but Maharashtra at the same time, even that was also there, right? At the later part it came, okay. Right. Now, how will you bring depth in your introduction here? So, for any introduction, don't directly go with the 2 things. Here, you might start with the date, you might start with the region, when it started, where it started, right? You might also talk about some kind of background information. You can define social religious reform movements also. Now, your analytical ability will be evident in the introduction itself, whether it is in the essay or whether it is in the GS introduction. So, once you have identified that there are more than one part or two part to the question, so all the parts of the question must be addressed in the introduction with a broader idea. So even last session I told the one line you write in the introduction should be like an essay topic, right? Like if you write a line in the introduction, which should have so much broad meaning and depth that I should be able to write an essay on that particular line. Sorry, I am not able to think what line for that particular question, right? I am just giving you the idea about it. So the line should be such that it should give hint to what to expect from your answer, right? Are you able to understand the context of the question? So why this question is important, in what context this particular question is important, right? And what is the significance of the topic in the question? If we can combine context, significance, everything in one or two lines, that becomes a better introduction. So after that introduction, you write little background and then you create the part, what are the reasons that gave rise to social religious reforms in general. Now instead of writing like 4 to 5 points linearly, so if you can write 2 to 3 points bringing better validations in terms of examples, right? You can sit here. So Bangalore crowd is very interactive, right? So look like what? यहाँ पे नया सरकार. So you are new. तो ठीक है. How many people know me? ठीक है. नहीं. Some people don't know about me, like. So my name is Vinay Kumar. So founder and director of Insight Sales. ठीक है. So yeah. देखने आए हो. Sorry. So thank you. Right. See, did you get the idea behind what I was telling? Can anybody sum it up? So what I was talking about is, when I read introduction, whether in your essay or whether in your GS answer, it is for me a window to your thinking capacity, thinking ability, or intellectual capacity, or your analytical ability, whatever you call it, right? The moment I read your introduction, I know that your depth of understanding is more than the another copy that I have read somewhere else. So that to bring the depth, you have to write such introductions that immediately they leave an impact. And from where will you find these introductions? One, if you have really understood the subject, if you really know for fact that you know the answer, then you can actually sum it up. Or because we lean away from reading standard sources. Like, I don't know now if it is still relevant. We used to tell, read NCERT textbooks. So there they have written beautiful lines. So if you look at, before every chapter, there are few lines which actually give a beautiful introduction to the entire topics, especially themes in world history, themes in Indian history, the 11, 12 textbooks. For entire theme, if you read first paragraph, you will understand that they have a purpose, right? And there is some kind of, you can expect more dimensions from the chapter. So that is what you should write. So don't write any cliche definitions, any random fact, don't quote any random report in the introduction. So go for a line which is thoughtful, which can actually leave an impression, and then start your answer by giving little background information and immediately move to the demand of the question. So in the body, instead of going for more number of points, go to the analysis. Now the directive word may be discuss, analyze, comment, elucidate, explain, enumerate, right? Comment. But still the underlying demand in all of your answers would be the analysis, the depth. Now how will you bring your depth? So can anybody say any one point for this answer? What was the factor that gave rise to Socio-religious movements. Okay, introduction of legal system and administrative system by British, which made aware Indian people about
the problems underlying in their own societies, or like introduce some education that there should be some.
So that is one point. Okay, then. But how did that reaction resulted? I mean, what created that reaction? So his point, right? Good. He is saying the reaction to the degenerating state of the Indian society. Okay.
Sir, enactment of the Sati law was the cornerstone of the starting of the social movement.
So that was after the social religious movement or before enactment of Sati law?
Sati law starting.
Okay. Yes.
Sir, at that time, press and literature was like going.
Yeah, the literature, enlightenment through literature. Okay. Rise of educated middle class. Okay. What? Presence of Reformation school of thought. Okay. So now, so let's go with this point, like first point and other points. So he said that the enactment or the introduction of the legal system, or some kind of administrative system by the British resulted in the awareness of the intelligentsia, awareness in the intelligentsia about the social realities. Now that is the point you have written. Now if I say that you have to bring depth to that point, what is the next step you have to write? Right. So what is analysis? First, analysis is breaking things into parts, right? Small parts, and deeply examining them. Now we have divided the growth and rise of social religious reform movements into around 4 different points. So the first point he talked about was introduction. So now instead of you moving to, by giving an example, introduction of legal system, what example will you give here? British concept of rule of law. Okay. So maybe you can give one example and you will move to another point. And like for example, he said about the literary movements influenced by English literature that created the awareness, maybe, right? So for that you might give a name of a one book or 2 books and you will move to another, right? So instead of doing that much, if you can, while giving the example itself, validate the point. Like for example, introduction of legal system, but how and why did it create that realization or awareness or kind of consciousness or enlightenment among the people, right? Again, it was among the elites only, not in the masses, right? So can you bring little finer details within that point, right? I'm not talking with like not so specialized like in optional subject, but little bit lower than that, but bit of depth in that point, so that your reasoning there, instead of just saying what it is and moving to another part of the question, your reasoning and trying to justify that point with a valid argument. Did you get this? So again, I am not asking you to do it for every point. So if you know like 4 points, at least do it to 2 points, right? That is one thing. So that if you do it for some important questions, like in optional I was telling, it will lift up the marks. Second thing in GS you need to avoid is that if you don't know anything to any question, it is always better to leave it blank, right? So I had the privilege of speaking to previous UPSC chairmen. So one of them said that any kind of dishonesty in these papers is actually punished, right? So like you don't know the answer to S400 or how GDP was computed differently compared to 2015 methods. So you tend to create an answer, cook up an answer. You know the concept, but you don't know exactly the answer, the exact demand of the question you don't know. So in those times, what people do is that they tend to write what they know rather than what is the demand of the question. Now with respect to S400, the demand of the question was this S400, how this air defense system is superior to other systems in the world, superior to other air defense systems in the world, right? That was the question. So how is S-400 air defense system technically superior to any other system presently available in the world? So now when I spoke about, most of the people had complained with respect to this question and the GDP question. So they didn't know exact answer. So when I asked what did you write, they were able to say that S-400 I had read in the newspaper. I was able to make it that it had the 400-kilometer range and it was some missile kind of stuff. So I wrote about it. I wrote about S-400 in the answer. Now the question is asking how it is technically superior compared to other available systems in the world. Now have you written any one example of other available systems in the world in your answer, right? Now for me that is the core demand in the question. So comparatively you have to write how this is technically superior compared to other systems available elsewhere in the world. Now if that part is missing and if you are writing only about S-400, 100% with all conviction I can say it will bring down your marks in the entire paper. Basically you are cooking up some answer. Like it is not like university exams where you write something relevant and expect 1 or 2 marks. Thinking that you write one paragraph relevant and you can get 1 mark. So in UPSC the demand is different. Right, there the precise expectation is the depth of your understanding. So if you are not showing that, again you are focusing on the range of information that you know something about S-400, so you will write about it, right? So then you are going to be punished, and it is a fact. So what you need to do is that you have to, wherever questions are broad, open-ended, so there definitely you can make sensible answers. If the question is factual, if the demand is more of facts, information, right? So if you know for sure, you go for it. So otherwise it is better to leave it. And I have seen people who have left these questions and have utilized that time, have utilized those words to enrich their other answers, have actually scored better marks even in paper 3. So I have like 2 candidates who have reached 100 marks in paper 3 in Bangalore, right? So I spoke to them, that's what. So there is more honesty evident in the paper. That is one thing. And of course, in some candidates, the better preparation, right? So maybe they were economics graduate or something, they don't exactly know the answer to that question. So either you know for sure what is the answer, or you don't know, make the mistake of cooking up your answers. So but, I mean that question was asked, I think somebody said some few days before the mains it was there in the news, right? So there is always way you can learn about these things, and what is your source for paper 2 and 3? How do you cover all the current affairs, all the important information related to the syllabus? From where do you cover? So do you read newspapers, or like do you already have notes for them? So you start reading newspapers and all. Okay. I have seen the secure compilations. There is Inside Secure initiative. Has anyone seen that? So my request, just go through them. So to trust, to read it from, it is another thing. If you are not aware of them, so 1 year ka Inside Secure compilations, you download them. They are under the download section. In every compilation, you will see that all the topics are divided syllabus wise. So in paper 1, general studies paper 1 for society part, so my suggestion is that you should definitely go through secure compilation, because every issue is covered in it from different perspectives. So if there is a issue related to women organization, so whenever there was a rape case, we might have covered from one angle. If there was specific policy for women with respect to their health or education, we might have covered the dimension. So women related, you will find at least 20-30 dimensions in those secure compilation. So if you can club them and make 1 or 2 page notes in your OneNote or Evernote, so you will have so many ideas, examples, facts for one topic. So for society part in paper 1, secure compilation, and paper 2, especially the social justice and IR part, paper 3, entire part. You just go through once. So if you see that it is covering all the parts, so that acts as your ready-made material for test series, whichever test series you are joining, right? You can have a quick revision and then you will have a ready-made content for them. So most of the, I don't know nowadays whether these toppers read, but till last year I was seeing, this year I haven't interacted with many toppers, but many toppers do go for secure compilations, especially for paper 2 and 3. So we have the habit of linking static with the current developments in paper 2 and 3. So I hope you follow that, right? तो तुम लोग बात ही नहीं करते हैं See, if you know 1 to relevant points, so you have to intelligently communicate that why you are writing these 2 points in your answer, right? So which part of the question you are trying to address using these 1 to 3 points, right? So be honest with that, right? So write only that much instead of just putting like what is S400 or putting diagram or something, you communicate. So this brings another point now, like when you are creating many parts, so analytical ability will be evident in introduction, of course in conclusion, but in the body part, how you transition from one part to another part. So I have seen people, picking one word from the question, they put reasons, solutions, way forward, mechanism, right? You pick one word from the question and then you create part, another one. So the answers have become so mechanical in nature, right? So what we call the soul part of the answer is missing. So it doesn't look like somebody is communicating your views or your arguments with the reader. It looks like you have just randomly put what you know in a abstract manner, right? So that kind of presentation is being discouraged nowadays. So don't blindly follow this point format, right? So even if it is GS 1, 2, 3, it can be mix of paragraph and point format, where after one part you will write a small paragraph saying that why the second part which you are going to write is important or why it is necessary to be written in the answer. So you can use some transition words and these connective words, however, moreover, nonetheless, in addition to, right, to add to, something like this, likewise, otherwise. So whatever these transition words, you bring them into your GS answers also, just to give them a proper structure where a reader is happy reading from introduction to conclusion. There, so whatever you want to convey is effectively conveyed. So don't go for this diagrammatic representation. For somebody, it might, of course, geography, some art and culture answer, IR, you can use map, diagrams and everything. But if you can convey your arguments through words by writing in sentences, prioritize that over randomly putting with diagram or something like that, right? Even that is also being discouraged. See, if it has worked in 1 or 2 toppers, doesn't mean that it will work in everyone's case. So that has become the problem. If somebody uploads a topper's copy, if everybody starts mimicking it, so then yours is gone. What you need to do, if topper copy is available, see if you can better it. Can you present your answer better than what topper has done? Can you write better content than what the topper has done? So instead of following it as a benchmark, find a way to create your own benchmark. Try to set your own standards. So that's what I meant by bit of ambition. In the beginning I used the word ambition, right? So that is what I meant by ambition in your answer, structures and presentation, right? So this GS1 and GS3 people are scoring low marks because the nature of the paper looks like more information oriented. So they end up dumping so much of content, facts and examples, losing out on the analysis part, right? The second reason is the dishonesty. So if you don't know, you leave it, but you are actually forcing yourself to answer them. So
Is there negative margin for irrelevant answers?
Yes, there is negative mark, for both irrelevant answers and illegible answers. And more than illegibility, the irrelevant answers are being punished. So this year I have seen like one minus 35 marks, 1 marks card, and then there is one minus 15 marks. And they are clueless, their handwriting is beautiful, right? So I have seen their handwriting, this very nice, but what could be the reason that you are penalizing them? So there is explicit penalizing and there is implicit, in terms of while evaluating they are reducing half marks, 1 mark everywhere. So paper 113, because of the nature of the question, they look all factual. So don't get carried away and write only the factual stuff, right? Analyze, reason. Paper 2, this year we have seen the scores are better, right? Everybody has scored good marks in paper 2 this year. And especially people with, again the trend has changed. If you notice that till 2019, if somebody had political science, public administration as their optional, they were actually scoring low in paper 2, right? Tina Dabi scored lowest in the paper 2 marks, GS paper 2. And for most of the, I don't want to generalize, but most of the marks I had seen, if they were bringing their specialized knowledge in GS papers. History people used to score low marks in the GS1, right? Have you noticed anyone? So I have noticed it. So now last 2 years the reverse has changed. I mean it has reversed. Law students or political science student, if they are good in their concept, in a minimal way, if they are bringing them in their GS answers, it is being rewarded, right? So like Avinash, I think 124 or something in GS2 paper, law optional. And he was good with analytical ability and he was good with law optional also. But so we had told like every student not to bring optional knowledge in the GS papers. They are basically general studies paper, but expectation is this analysis part, not bringing your thinkers and examples and facts from the optional, but that analytical ability from the optional.
Sir, if you look at question number 2, sir, it's a purely factual question.
Distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget. Explain the components of both these budgets. So what analysis we can bring? So you tell me what analysis we can bring here. No, so we'll have a discussion. Even I cannot think directly. So his question is, the second question is purely factual. So it is saying that distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget. Explain the components of both these budgets. So where you can bring analysis is that there was a debate regarding this also, right? So what was the debate?
There are some, there is one subheading that under revenue budgets that PPT to states for creation of capital should not be considered a part of deficit for central government. So we can say that what is the uses of capital receipts, that how they are more beneficial, like for infrastructure creation, and then their advantages as compared.
But again, so what is saying is that so under the expenditure head, so there was this head subhead. What did he say?
Under revenue part and capital part. So under revenue part, the expenditure which central government specifically gives to states.
That was not to be considered as deficit.
Yes.
Okay.
So that analysis we can also make, analysis of what are the advantages of capital.
So that's what I was going to say. So don't make it a dominant part of the answer. So either you can bring it in the introduction as a context. Like this question, the context you can give it in the introduction, that part. In the body part even I don't see any scope for analysis, right? But if there was any current development with respect to these things, if there was any issue related to this, maybe you can bring and highlight the significance, right? About what? About the budget, maybe, I don't know, right? So I am not an economics guy, so don't ask me these questions. Honesty is the best policy, right? So you can bring, in this answer, definitely you can bring. So that is a factual part. right? So factual part give second priority, but if you know any issue surrounding this particular issue, definitely bring in the introduction, or if you have any suggestion to make with respect to components, that they should be further divided or added or something, maybe in the conclusion part, you can bring it, right? Any economics graduate here?
Can we start like in general, why is budgeting important in policy making?
Maybe yes, that is even better, bringing the policy making angle, right? So someone is saying something there. Very good. So he is saying that the capital part is for the future and revenue part is for the present. So we need to bring some parity or balance between those two or something, right? For me, that conclusion is better than a factual conclusion. So I told you, right? At least, so what you can go by is that if there is a factual question in introduction and conclusion, ensure that there is depth. Okay. So now coming to GS4, what will fetch more marks? So I have seen at least 2 to 3 mistakes made in the GS4 papers. So I'll start with the case studies. So in the case studies, everybody has the habit of, writing this circle diagram, highlighting stakeholders as introduction, right? And then writing facts of the case, putting a table or something. So the case studies are given with a purpose. So basically they are testing your problem solving skills, right? Your ability to identify ethical issues and how you are going to resolve them, right? So for me it is like a mini essay. So the way you write ethics case study, you are communicating to the evaluator that you have understood the significance of the case study. So what is the context? So what are the core issues of the case? And what is the most important fact of the case? And over all the stakeholders in the case, combine them and write a paragraph as introduction, instead of separately highlighting stakeholder diagram. So you are unnecessarily wasting 1/3 space in your answer booklet when you write stakeholders. It doesn't have any value addition, right? So now I am not looking for that part. I am not more interested. So where I am more interested is the innovative way, out of the box thinking, or the ethical justifications you give to resolve an issue. So the mistake I have seen is that when somebody asks you to resolve a case study, to resolve a crisis or any ethical dilemma, when you are writing course of action, people write, I will do this X method, I will follow this X method. For example, let us say that you want to rescue a child from child labor. So he is working in a hazardous situation, you want to rescue the child, and you might write that maybe you are an officer with very good salary and well settled family with your own kids. So now you see a kid and you have to rescue that kid. So you might start, what will you do in that situation? One of the options could be, maybe you will temporarily take that child to your home, right? Maybe give him certain shelter, maybe temporarily. Another option could be, you will take him to any rehabilitation center, a child care center, and you will put him in there. Another option, you sponsor his education, you will put him in a residential school, you will look after his expenses. That could be another option. So another option could be, you will inform the police or inform any relevant authorities and then ask them to take care of the child. So usually people write these options, right? But seldom they give ethical justifications. Now if you are thinking about informing the police authority or any authority, relevant authority, and requesting them to take care of the child, why are you doing that? Right? So what is the ethical justification for this particular course of action? Right? The people who write ethical justification, now ethical justification can be, maybe one of the theories may be supporting this particular course of action, right? Second, there may be a Supreme Court observation, directive, a case, right, which can justify your particular course of action. That is both legal and ethical in that moment to do so, right? or there may be a precedence. Somebody had set an example which was applauded, which was accepted largely by the society. So you are trying to go with that particular course of action. You can quote that also, right? In some cases, you can pick up, lines or thoughts from moral stories or, these Mahabharata, Ramayana, other scriptures also. People have the issue that, don't you think if I write Mahabharata, it is a religious thing or something like that? I don't think it is anything to do with the religious, right? So basically, even they are also source of our morality, right? Right. So you can take the best of it, you can quote that also. So this ethical justification, if it is missing in your answer, you will not cross your 100 marks or 90 marks in ethics paper. Second aspect that is missing is pragmatism. So for some reasons, people try to write ideal answers, right? They want to sound more ethical when they are writing. So idealism is not rewarded in your ethics answers. What is idealism? Like you want to come across as like perfect embodiment of or epitome of all morality and ethics. So no, you are not. You're like straightforward. Like there is no like Immanuel Kant, right? So you want to. The means are more important, not the ends. That kind of attitude. So you have to find a way to sound more pragmatic, right? See, so as long as it is not breaking laws, rules or regulations, right? It is within the scope of societal morality or constitutional morality. Ensure that your answer has practical touch, right? So not like ideal. Like for example, there was this case about UPSC interview, right? So you are going for UPSC interview, you see an accident victim. So the ideal answer is, you will take the victim, you will go to Gangaram hospital, right? So you will ensure that treatment is given to the victim, right? Because you believe that is the most humane thing to do in that moment. Even if it is your last attempt and this interview is more important, you want to protect the victim. Of course, the society will applaud, your sacrifice, everything. You might be given some medal or something like that. But that is not the most practical thing to do that, right? You have other options also, practical options, right? So you can arrange a vehicle, ambulance, maybe you can go late to the interview little bit, but you can make some arrangement, ensure that the victim is really, taken care of in his golden hour or something. But there is a practical way. In any case study, ensure that you don't sound idealistic. The same is evident in the interview answers also. Anybody who gives very ideal answers are not given good marks nowadays. So you have to be someone who can get the things done, right? Somebody who can take quick decisions. Again, the third aspect is out of the box ideas. So instead of giving, see in interview what happens, so when somebody asks the case study, when somebody gives the answer, we say that don't answer like MAINS, ethics case study, right? That if there is a farmer protest is going on, if it gets too violent, you are a SP in charge of that area and you are there in that location, what will you do in that moment? If that is an interview question, so you start giving answer, right? Like I will call for the backup, I will fire in the air and I will warn the protesters, so not to be violent or something. If they don't listen, one of them I will shoot in the leg or something. I mean, start giving some answer. Like, for listeners, you start looking like what you write in the mains. So, even in mains, you should not write like that. These are, of course, some of the courses of action you can opt for. But is there something beyond that you can do in that moment? Some of the out of the box idea, right? Something innovative, can you do something about it, the situation? So other people say that I will talk to the leader of the protest, I will take elders into consideration, right? So I will take religious sects, if it is a religious violence, into consideration and try to, appeal to them, ask them to, calm the mobs or something, right? So, but the expectation is something more practical in that. Yes. Pardon? Move? Move food stalls. Acha, nice. Has anyone done that? Hmm? So bring ice cream stalls, right? Or distribute money. No, he says he has given an example here, like out of the box, that move food stalls into that particular away. Why away? So they will go to eat, like they disperse.
But he means like people will starve that they won't do project at that place.
Acha, acha, that is what you are basically starving them. Cut the supply chain. Okay, so in Bangalore also we saw in nowadays what they do, they cut the internet immediately, right? So this is one idea is giving move the food stalls. So even I didn't know about it, away from the protest region, right? So that they don't have anything to eat except goli. So you move away, then they might calm down or something. Then you warn also on mic, there is no food, you stop. So good, I mean you have to think in that direction. And there are so many IAS officers, so many IPS officers across India who have actually implemented certain innovative ways. It can be to address the starvation problem, hunger problem, certain lack of infrastructure, education, health related. So for them, you study the best practices that are there for every theme. So you can categorize all the case studies into themes. For every theme, identify the best practices, innovative not only in India, across the world also.
Sir, where we can find all these like case studies or everything in such a short span of time?
See, like past 10 years, we have 60 case studies in the UPSC only. So if you are somebody who is struggling with speed in ethics paper, my suggestion is take up 6 case studies, put a timer 1.5 hours. You should write in 1 hour 50 minutes, ideally in the exam. But train yourself to write 6 case study answers in 1.5 hours. First, start with this previous year questions. So every week you can sit like again come to the class, 6 case studies, 1.5 hours. You try to write the answers. So at home we are starting something called as MAINS 75 days plan from tomorrow, I think. So where we are daily giving 1 ethics answer and 2 GS answers. So this year we are combining ethics come GS also. So every day you can do practice of 3 answers. At least you can do ethics answer practice. You do that, and we are planning to give synopsis of those questions also the very next day, where you can compare your answers. Or also you can take all 3 questions of 7 days, and then again write it as a 3-hour test also if you want. No, you asked about case studies. Achha, best practices, see, they are scattered, like you have to visit like UN websites, certain reports, thematically you have to collect. For example, if it is education, I would visit Finland education ministry website maybe, right? See what is their education model, which is applauded across the world, right? So maybe Japanese education system, they might have. I think if you can intelligently Google, you will find them.
The timing was also the issue.
So you got the solution. Welcome. You wrote the mains last time.
No, sir. But whenever I wrote like the test,
Yeah, right. So coming, good. So within ethics, the quote-based questions, right? So in the quote-based questions, there should be at least 3 to 4 diamonds visible. So usually you look at the quote, I don't know. Integrity is a value that empowers the human being. Justify with suitable illustration. Integrity is a value that empowers the human being, right? Now when integrity is the value that empowers the human being, justify with suitable illustration, right? So that is for 150 marks. So you know the definition of integrity, right? So here also don't start with integrity is, right? What is the definition? So acting honestly even when across the time and space, correct? So acting honestly across the time and space, even when no one is absent or something like that. So it is being absolutely honest in all kind of circumstances, the integrity, right? Now the question is asking, integrity is a value that empowers the human being. So 150 words you have to write. I said there should be 3 to 4 dimensions in the answer. So instead of starting with definition, integrity is something, you start with, as I said in other introductions, a broad introduction. So what could be better introduction here? 1 or 2 lines. Any intelligent people here? You want to start with a quote. Good. So he wants to start with like quote of Vivekananda, life of Vivekananda, something like that. Any line you can think of for this. Integrity is a value that empowers the human being. Right. The key words are empowerment, empowering the human being, and it says that integrity is a key value in empowering the human being. Right. So for empowerment, what are all the other things essential? Okay. So all the great leaders had integrity. So they not only empowered themselves, they were also able to empower the masses also, right? Acha, Gandhiji and Chauri Chaur. So his integrity to take back the, okay. Anyone who is good in ethics? Okay, it is the sum of all the values. So what I would write, maybe one line is that, the basically it talks about empowerment of human beings. So because integrity provides an individual courage to stand up to any kind of injustices wherever it happens, right? That empowers any individual who practices this particular value or something. Basically, I am giving an idea here, like you are person of integrity, you have the courage to stand up to any injustice anywhere, right? And then maybe you can define what is integrity. You must define integrity. After defining integrity, you should also define what do you mean by empowerment here. Empowering human being. So like what do you mean by empowerment here? Like empowerment in what sense? No, that we don't call it as integrity. So like what Hitler had was, nice, integrity is a positive concept. Always. Yeah, so of course, like you, in the answer you define integrity and define what do you mean, what is your definition of empowerment of human being? Like what do you mean by empowerment of human being? So we talk about empowerment in terms of having various choices in life to choose something from. In terms of having income security, in terms of social security, that can be empowerment, right? Enhancing one's capability, that can be empowerment. But in this case, when you have integrity, what is the definition of empowerment? Good, nice. So it actually, when you are a person of integrity, so you will have a better opportunity to build a strong social capital, right? So you will build trust, like if you are an officer with integrity, right? So you are better suited to govern. The people will trust more and more numbers, right? So that is one way. What are the 3-4 dimensions? You can ask few questions. Why and how that integrity empowers? Why and how that integrity empowers human being? So what is the process involved here? So you are a person of integrity, right? Now the quote is saying that it will empower human beings. Why and how that happens is the answer that is required in this question. Then you have to justify with suitable illustration, that why and how you have to justify with suitable illustration. So your illustration go for 2 kind of examples. One example from the life of thinkers, teachers, administrators, leaders, that is there in the syllabus. So another example which you have observed or which you have read in a story or something, like or your own experience also, right? So there should be 2 examples, one drawn from the life of the great people, another either from the scripture, some other kind of story kind of stuff here. And then in the conclusion, what will you write for conclusion in these kind of answers? Nice. So he is saying that people who practice integrity in the life will face lots of problems, but at the end of the day they have more peace of mind, or their conscience is clear and pure, so they have better sleep. So that's what he is saying. Any other conclusion?
How we can enhance integrity as a value in human beings?
So can you write a generic conclusion like integrity is the bedrock on which transparency and governance ensures that not only the human being but the whole citizenry is empowered?
Definitely you can write. Anything else? Any, in the light of any issue or any crisis, any event, can you write that conclusion? Now we talk about empowerment every day, right? Empowerment of women, empowerment humans, empowerment of everyone. But in our policy, in our day-to-day business of the government, do we consider this aspect? So we don't consider it, right? So maybe you can say that this can be brought as, yeah. See, try to stay away from KMK example and all. I mean, nowadays, so you go for better examples. Yeah. So in both essay and ethics paper, so never go for cliched, obvious, generic examples. So in essay what happens? So we see, if there is essay about values and all, we start seeing so much about Vivekananda, APJ Abdul Kalam, Mother Teresa, right? Sudha Murthy nowadays, and so many other people. So in across the essays we see these kind of examples. Even in ethics answers also we see these kind of KMK, Durga Shakti Nagpal, Satyendra Jain. There are few more officers.
Also, there is an IS officer who
Armstrong Pame.
started the Chuppi Tod movement for the empowerment of women. Like from domestic violence, they had
Very good.
Chuppi Tod movement that was started.
So if you know these kind of things, you definitely mention them, but not the obvious generic. TN session maybe. See, like put extra effort. That is what is required in these. Now you think with respect to the competition. So you may be thinking that you are writing better example, but someone else is also writing similar examples. So try to collect better examples. There are hundreds of other personalities, and you need not be personality. I was talking about another student, like the essay was about journey. Life is a long journey from human being to being human. So I was talking about one of the dimension, like there was this point that this journey starts from the moment of the birth of the human being or something, right? So I talked about, so what about the child? The child is innocent. It is already more humane than so all the adult humans, right? So can we? So where is the point that this being humane, the journey starts, right? Now, can you, what kind of examples you can start thinking about it, right? This is one dimension. When it comes to example, I just saying that there is book Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka, I think, right? There is book of Crime and Punishment. There is a character who goes through so much of turmoil and right because he has committed a crime. Then the child example I was talking about Oliver Twist, the child character in the book. So there are characters within fictions and within these epics, or it can be a story of Lord Ram or some character in Mahabharata, Ramayana also, right? So try to bring even those personalities as examples also, right? So you need not go with the real life people all the time, right? So any doubts so far? So all the serious people of Delhi, any doubts?
Sir, in one of your videos you had said that spectrum is useless for
Yeah, I said that, correct.
I wanted to know how to about it.
See, like I said, spectrum is useless because it is a compendium of facts. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So when I was talking about introduction, better introduction, so when you look at standard sources like, like if books are written by the despised people nowadays, who is the professor emeritus, who is that lady? The ancient India, no? Romila Thapar. Of course, I am not asking you to read those books, but Bipin Chandra or these books. So the kind of analysis they bring, whether it is left or right, that is irrelevant. There is another book by Shekhar Bandyopadhyaya, Placido Partition. So if you look at the introduction, the kind of sentences they use are totally absent, even in books like Lakshmikant and Spectrum books, right? So now if you want to lift content from these books, so that kind of thought process itself is killed. So you cannot think like that. So when you are writing your answers, so at least for introductions or even conclusions, ensure that you read standard sources. And I am not just saying for the sake of saying this sounding bit. So this is a fact. So because you are in the race, now you are sure of clearing prelims because you want to go on to get very good rank. You know that after 932 highest score is in this year mains 800,
Don't know the exact figure, but it's around 800 something.
870 something. 872 is the highest score after 932, right? So there is the 60 mark gap, but after 872, so there is fight for every mark. The margin goes on decreasing. So this year we also noticed that in the interview the marks have come down overall. So there are only 13 people who have scored above 200 in the entire list. So last year there were 26 candidates who scored 200 plus in top 100 itself. So in top 100 there were 26 people who scored 200 plus. This year in the entire list only 13 people who have scored 200 plus. So you cannot completely rely on interview also, okay. And we have seen so many people getting 135, 140, 150. Even some people who had scored 190, 200, their scores also have come down 10, 20 marks in interview. So your best bet is scoring really good marks in mains. So I think rank 8, despite 157, she was able to get rank 8 because of good scores in mains. So ensure that, so whatever ideas I have discussed in this session, right? For somebody it might look like, I don't know how it will look like, but they are actually valid ones. So you have to up the game across your answers, focus on quality, across the papers, focus on the quality, bring that intellectual trait in your answers, make people think when they read about your answers, introductions or essays, right? So whatever you write. So never write for the sake of writing. So for that, when you start with the test series, don't be in a race to complete the paper in the beginning. So don't try to write 20 answers in the very first test itself. So instead, make writing quality answers a habit. So choose maybe 12 or 14 answers in the first test. Ensure that you do justice to the demand of the question based on the discussion we had, right? Like, so what is that analytical element we can bring? What is the broad idea or context that we can bring in the introduction? So think, because if you are clearing prelims, you already have so much knowledge, content. It is not that difficult to think and write. What happens while trying to complete the paper, that thinking takes the back seat, right? That priority to write quality answer takes the back seat. So because you are kind of paranoid to complete the paper, and this notion that writing more answers will get more marks is wrong, right? When you write more than like 15-20 tests, if the focus is on quality in the beginning, over a period of time, you will see improvement in quantity as well as quality. This is 100% guaranteed. So this I have seen like year after year, year after year. In core batch, we used to tell students to focus only on the quality in the beginning, and who used to be worried, they used to write 6 to 8 answers in 3 hours. So they went on to write, like 16, 17 answers in 3 hours, quality answers, and their marks is better than the rest of the competition. So out of 10 marker questions, your target should be 5 to 5.5 marks, right? If you are writing a test series, so 5.5 marks should be your target out of 10. 7 to 7.5 marks should be target in 15 markers, right? So if you are getting 3, 3.5 or 4 marks, pause, analyze your answer, see that if it is lacking depth, right? So depth is the essence, right? So if you come across as a thinking individual, so who can ensure that depth, you are going to be rewarded really well, right?
It's a follow-up to whatever you're saying. When you're writing mains, there is obviously an urge to complete the whole paper, right?
Hmm.
It becomes very difficult to leave 3 or 4 questions. And in 10 marks, you're given 150 words and 2 pages, and for 15 marks, you're given 3 pages. So this whole mindset about filling the whole pages, that's been in my mind. I have never been able to fill the whole page, but if you look at topper copies, some people have been able to fill up everything. I'm not commenting on the content,
Hmm.
quality of the content, but in your experience, how do we go about it? Like for a 150 word question, is it okay if we write 120 words but have quality content?
Correct.
For a 3 page, if you write 2.5 pages.
So fortunately, in the present scheme of things, in the present demand of the examination, this is okay. So if you had asked the same question in 2019, my answer would be fill the pages, right? Put more example, more content, but now it is not like that. There is very clear-cut evidence thinking that quality is, rewarded more than the quantity. So if you have quality points, it can be just like 120, 130 words. So don't worry about it. So don't have the notion of filling the spaces.
And for somebody who's
And the speed will improve automatically. Naturally, it will improve. So if you write more number of tests, so which you are worried about, like leaving 3, 4 answers. So what I have noticed is that if you write more number of tests, coming to classroom in a simulated environment, the speed will definitely improve.
And one more thing, for somebody who's writing mains for the first time, I don't know what percentage of people who write mains have already written mains once or twice,
Hmm.
but how do we compete with such people? Because they would have gone through the process once or twice, they would have written tests, whatever it is.
Hmm.
We write more tests, revise more.
So his question is for somebody who is writing mains for the first time. How many of you are writing mains first time? Okay. So he is worried about other people who didn't raise your hands, so that you are already experienced. That fear is definitely valid. But fortunately, what I am noticing is that there is the freshers who are entering the examination, right? Somewhere they are having an advantage last 2 years. Maybe it is, if you are not polluted by, the coaching and this and that. So if you are bringing some kind of freshness in your answers, fresh ideas, fresh thought, the depth, you are going to be rewarded. Now don't worry about the competition, because this is game of 1 year it is. So what they wrote last year is not relevant this year. So if you are updated for past 1 year for this examination, you are equally in the competition compared to them. If they are not updated with respect to the developments that have taken place in 1 year, you will see that, I'll give you an example. So there are people who take EOL, right? Some people take EOL, and they used to come to Bangalore also. Very few number, like 3-4 people. If somebody used to study like a fresher, the one thing I tell the moment they come is that forget that you are IPS officer or IRS officer, treat yourself as a fresher, right? And compete like a fresher, somebody who is going to write your first mains. Some people follow it, some people don't follow it. So there was one guy this year who followed it, right? So he didn't improve rank because of maths optional, the marks came down, but his GS marks actually jumped. So 452 from 4 papers, right? Kumar Shivashish. So he 452 from 4 GS. But what he did was he unlearned whatever he had done in the previous attempt. He again followed the secure initiative. We asked people to follow secure initiative, write essay every week. He did everything, and he wrote all the tests of I Will test series, right? So he was able to again compete. So it is not about multiple mains or anything. It is about the mindset. So if you, even people who have written multiple mains, you have to treat it as your first mains. So his question is that how do we judge that there is mismatch between what we are writing and the demand of the question? See, that is where creating parts of the question comes into picture. The moment you are reading the question, right, if it is a statement based question or if it is a straightforward 2 to 3 part question, so in your mind you should have the parts of the question imprinted the moment you are reading the question. So take pencil, split the question into parts, ensure that the skeleton of the question is imprinted. The moment you know the skeleton, if you have created parts of the question, then you will not deviate, because the demand of the question is divided into parts. Each demand, it has sub-demand. So I think that exercise, if you do repeatedly, it will take care of that problem. Have you done that? Like you try to do that, it will actually take care of the problem. So any more questions, or you want to go back and read for mains?
So how to tackle certain questions that are straight up asking you to criticize the existing policies or the government, for example. Like I have written IBM tests.
Yeah, so this is a very important point he brought up. So he is asking what about criticizing government policies and all. So it is in paper 3, 5A. Refugees should not be turned back to the country where they would face persecution of human right violation. Examine the statement with reference to ethical dimension being violated by the nation claiming to be democratic with open society. So in 2019, I floated a theory that there are questions, trap questions, right? So trap question is some question where it looks like it is inviting you to openly criticize the government, right? So avoid that tendency. See, so you say YouTube live, so I was avoiding that point. So don't criticize government nowadays, right? So if at all you want to, no, these are trap questions. Basically, they are inviting. We have the, like again, this brings to important point. The moment you look at the topic, you have the tendency to justify the topic. So most people, when you write answer writing, when you write the essay, the moment you look at the topic, the tendency is to justify the topic. So now it is saying that the so-called democratic, open, peaceful society, secular country is turning away refugees. Is it ethical or not? That is what it is asking. Now the tendency, now the question itself is anyway criticizing the government, right? So now you will go on saying it is unethical because of XYZ, because of the XYZ reasons. No, that shouldn't be your answer. You have to start by saying that the country in the question is still peaceful, right? Open, secular, accommodative, strictly follows the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and is on the path to becoming Vishwaguru. Right? No, it is something like this only. So then in the body you say that there was definitely an ethical dilemma in sending back the refugees, but going by the utilitarian principle as propounded by Jeremy Bentham or somebody, a country as diverse as India, housing billions of people, need to ensure the security of the people as well, something like this. So because there is genuine security concern, it had to take a tough decision which was warranted because of the circumstances. So however, if you look at the history and all, India has always been accommodative, peaceful country, and it continues to be something like this. So you write entire positive answer, kind of showing concern. So you are also bringing the issue that maybe the decision was wrong, but it was necessitated because of certain concern or something like that. So never criticize governments. It should be constructive criticism in a way that for a reader it should look like you have positive thing to say. So think positively, bring that constructive attitude across the papers, especially in essay and ethics answers, right? So blanket criticism, showing activist mindset in your answers, right? So ऐसे लगते सब लोग यहाँ पे JNU DU, so we don't have JNU DU in, हम लोग तो बहुत सॉफ्ट है वहाँ पे साउथ में. अच्छा वो पता, इवेल्युएशन कौन करता है? They are from these universities only, JNU, DU and other big universities. The people have changed in these universities now, right? So the universities remain same, name भी change होगा future में, but so the people have changed, right, in universities. So don't think that they will come and so you say ki Azadi and they will give you marks and that. So election also you are not able to win Azadi and all that, right? So ensure that there is constructive criticism but positive attitude across the papers.
Sir, but comparatively, this question still has scope to argue from both the sides. But let's say the question like
But
why will the election commissioner
more weightage for positive. India is a good country. Yeah, you can use. Actually, you use Chanakya also. Good. Mahabharata, very good. So as a justification, you can actually go with that. Nice. So any other question?
Sir, will secure cover all the current affairs or should be
It actually, honestly speaking, it covers most of the issues. Paper 2 and 3, almost 90% of the issues will be covered. And we are also coming up with something called bridge courses for paper 1, 2, 3. So we are planning to do 1 or 2 of them in offline in Delhi also. Going by the, like you can speak to some of the toppers also who got enrolled. So they were able to get quality content for paper 2 and 3 especially. Because it's for you, it's difficult to make notes in short duration. So maybe if at all if it happens, you sit in one lecture, if you like you might enroll, otherwise you can go anywhere else. So we are not marketing people to.
So the strategy that so far and is in the mainstream is basically you should attempt, like try to attempt for 20 questions, and that's how you try and prepare for the mains for the 3 months that are written prelims.
Okay.
Something that I've come across here is, if I may take the liberty, it's revolutionary to say so, where you attempt 17 or 18 but write extremely good answers. Try to write
Correct,
good
correct.
answers. So, like, this seems very convincing, but
You have the fear of.
yeah, I don't really know
that really works or not.
And it's a big risk actually to think that okay, I'll go with 17, 18 and like not really because
See,
it gives you an opportunity to not write the answers where you can't put excellent content, and there are 3 to 4 questions in every paper where you cannot, no matter how much you study in the limited time.
see, in that case, like what I will do is that, like, let's say you know answers to 17 questions properly, and the 3 answers you have vague idea about it. You are familiar, but you don't know precise to the point answer. So even in that case, what I will do, I will first answer 17 questions, and if there is time, like let's say I have 15 minutes more, right? So I'll honestly see if I can do any bit justice to the one of these 3 questions, but I will use my extra 10 minutes time or 15 minutes time to come back and further enrich the 17 answers. I am sure few more points will require few more examples here and there. Maybe conclusion you can add something, some of the points you can do something, right? Maybe you can write a diagram or something. So for me that will lift my marks. The 3-4 marks you might get extra in those 3 answers, you'll be getting more than that if you can come back and do justice to these 17 or 18 answers. See, if the 3 questions are open-ended, you take a chance, right? Still you can make you can cook up sensible answer. But if it is purely factual, only in that condition I am asking you to leave it. I mean, don't answer it. See, it depends on optional preparation, right? So if you are somebody who has already completed optional, like in general, if I have to speak, more weightage to GS and ethics, not so much to optional, irrespective of which optional you have, because the advantage you are going to gain from optional is not huge. You should be in a position to answer all 19 questions or 20 questions in your optional, but in these 10-15 days, if you can enrich your notes, you can do justice to answer, that much is enough. But some people have the habit of spending like 1 month, 2 months altogether only for optional. So that is not worth it, to be honest.
So what is the time division ratio? What should be the time division ratio between reading new content and writing answers?
Acha, what is the time or weightage given to reading new content and writing answers? So for the most important topics, you should definitely update your content. That's why I recommended secure, right? So there are, if you look at all the GS papers, there are certain issues, core topics which are repetitive. So for them, definitely update your content, right? I think you should give equal weightage for both the things. So don't rely on your old notes, whatever notes you created like last year. So that mistake don't do people who are writing mains another time. Your last year notes useless this year, because why? So many toppers have uploaded, right? So all the people will be using them again. So your notes are not yours anymore. In a way, you have to update them.
Sir, I have written tests every sector and I've been getting reviews like to work on my structure. But sir, the problem is like in one paper I have used that structure. I've been the remark that structure is good, and I've used that same structure in another paper and I've been given that structure can improve and it's not the good
Hmm.
structure. So my question is like first of all I'm confused about the structure thing, and second is should I experiment at this stage? My
No,
students
no.
should stick to the
See, give priority to content. Give priority to demand of the question. Now the structure presentation comes last. Now people try to present, beautify their answers, try to structure is important. See, what is structure basically? So you are dividing your answer, you are trying to communicate most effectively the most important aspects of your answer so that they are prominently visible, right? So as long as you are able to do that, structure basically divide your answer in such a way that equal weightage is given to according to demand of the question, right? So if you are able to do it paragraph wise, point wise, by doing subheading, putting box or anything.
like I write points and then when I write such points, so it distorts the shape of the answer and a lot of spaces are
Yeah, right.
filled. So sometimes people say that this like if I fill all these spaces, I've been told that it looks visibly good. But sometimes when spaces appear, I've been told that work on these spaces, these should not appear.
No, don't worry about it. Anyway, you bring your copy, I'll see like next time when I come, July. But don't worry too much about these cosmetic kind of feedback which talk about superficial things. So if see when you are writing answer, worry more about the quality of your points, examples, rather than structure and presentation. You wanted to ask somebody here raised the question hands. Hmm.
Can you just summarize that how to go about in these 90 days? Because we start well,
Hmm.
then in between we slow down and we don't do. So my question is, what should be the bare minimum things that
In these 90 days. So his question is in these 90 days, remaining 90 days, see only 90 days are remaining now. Only 90 days. So now you had 100 days, right? So in 90 days, how to go about it? So the very first step, strengthening ethics and optional. Ethics and essay are a continuous process. Like you have to be indulged in writing them, updating them continuously. The more you write, the more mature your writing will be, right? Your arguments, your ideas and all. So start immediately with, that's why 75 days plan, every day we are going ethics. So don't compromise, let it be a constant in your 90 days. Every day you write one ethics answer. And as I said, weekend like 6 case studies to improve the speed, that also you can write. Secondly, essay test, never miss any essay. Wherever you enroll, you again. So last year, before last year, I actually said, told in one of the session that all 8 topics will be philosophical. It came like that. So what made me say this is the very demand of the examination is to break the herd mentality. These kind of topics will not require any kind of so much of prior preparation through a textbook or anything, right? So you have to apply your mind. You have to argue. But when you make an argument to validate, substantiate, justify your argument, you need to have examples, right, or illustrations. Now what people do is that they try to take these illustrations from the GS thing they are reading. If you are reading modern history, you take example from modern history. If you are reading constitution, you will get example from that, right? So that shouldn't be the case. So for that it requires a bit of extra effort. So ensure that you start collecting those kind of examples, ideas from, as I said, blink list, one idea I gave. So but you search for other sources and you enrich. Third one is, if you are enrolling for a test series, any test series, whether you are prepared or not prepared, go and write the test on the same day, wherever it is. And ensure that you write it from the classroom. If somebody is watching online, if somebody is in the home, I recommend you to go to write the test in a nearby school or library or any public park or wherever it is, where you have this sound, noise, right? So train your mind basically to any kind of exigency that might happen, so that you are comfortable writing the test in the examination days, so that nothing irritates you on that day. That is one thing. So write every test, so be motivated to write about it. So then optional test series is something everybody should write. Whichever optional you have, compulsorily write optional test series. So somebody asked like weightage wise. So optional test, if somebody is conducting, they will give you synopsis and all, right? So you rely on them, optional questions of this test series plus previous 10 years. So priority should be given to these two. If you are short on time, last 10-year question papers. So for optionals like law and all, there is no good test series, right? So ask a friend to prepare a question paper and come to classroom and answer that. So these are few things, right? And last leg of test, both optional and GS give in a simulated environment, morning and afternoon, 1 week before your actual exam. So come to the classroom and compulsorily, wherever you are. So if you are in the home, if your center is Delhi or Bangalore, you come 10 days before your exam. So come to a classroom and write both the tests in a simulated environment. If it is your first mains, compulsorily do that. So got some really new perspectives on mains. Thanks, sir. Somebody is saying that in the online comments. Yeah, so how to conclude philosophical essay? See, about this I am going to take 8 sessions actually. I will just give brief hint about. Any philosophical essay, conclusion must be some kind of futuristic, woeful and definitely optimistic. So never end it on a sarcasm, never end it on a dystopian way, like, you see the end of the world, the negative kind of stuff. You will see that the whole humanity is degrading, right? The values are gone, the children nowadays are killers. So something like negative and all, completely avoid it in the conclusion. So let it be more positive, but within the conclusion, ensure that there is some kind of surprise element, right? A surprise element comes across as a new dimension related to the topic itself, but when I read that, it makes me thinking, when I'm about to end your essay, I read suddenly one surprising idea from your side, that it makes me think, it makes me, wonder about how you can think about that kind of unique surprise conclusion, right? It depends topic to topic. When I'm doing this session, I'll definitely talk about it. But don't write any cliched summary in the conclusion. Don't write your Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, there are shlokas and all. People write them in conclusion. So many people have written this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, right? That is why I remember this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So don't end it on a poem. Nowadays, Rabindranath Tagore poem people write that. What is that? The fear wala. Where the mind is without fear. What is that? So you memorize like 1 or 2 poems here and there and think like, you're doing something extraordinary stuff. You're putting extraordinary stuff. So there are people who are far better than that. Fine. So if you have any doubt, otherwise we can wind it up. So I'll be answering. Okay. Thank you so much.